Entirely too much fun for anyone to handle. We have seen some updates now, finally, across the board, pretty much on what the SEC schedule is going to look like for next season. Of course, the biggest update here, Maddie, this week was the release well, not this week, but over the last 10 days or so, the release of the SEC basketball conference game schedule. What were some of your thoughts on it?
Um, that if you win a national championship, you get the easiest schedule in the SEC.
Oh, I mean, Florida's got some challenges up ahead for them, and they got plenty of stuff. But yeah, they do have a home and home series with what was it? South Carolina was one of the big ones.
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like, before we dive into Florida's, it just seemed like, they kind of got the best picks when it comes to home away, and we'll dive more into it. But, looking at everybody else, it's going to be like it was last year. It's a hard conference, so you got to take those games where you can get them, and it looks like Florida got kind of the pick of the litter there when it comes to that.
They definitely have a path to an SEC championship again, especially getting a few of these games that they have that are set up for their schedule. But let's talk about like some of the best things that we saw and things that we have questions about and overall stuff. But let's start with what I would think. Let's talk about what are the best home and home series that you saw in this SEC schedule release. I'll start with one since we just started talking about Florida. How about Florida and Kentucky? Like big rivalry back in the day. We saw this just recently, these two facing each other 2 years ago. It's always been a really good series, and you can think back to the Billy Donovan years and how great Kentucky Florida has been. This should be really good because not only is it a return to this rivalry being twice a year, it is also Florida has a really good basketball team. Kentucky has a really good basketball team, and these should be some very compelling games. One at Rupp and one down south in Gainesville. A lot of fun here to watch, especially because both these teams put together stellar front courts, it seems like, over the offseason. Your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, we knew Florida's front court was going to be phenomenal just based off of their retention. So really the question up to a month or so ago was, would Kentucky be able to handle Florida's front court? But Mark Pope went in there and got it done. And I think we are going to have an interesting battle on our hands there.
Kentucky and Florida should be like one of the best battles of the front court in the SEC next season. It should be really, really good. What were some other series that you saw in here on the home and homes that you were really pumped up about when you saw?
I mean, there's always those good rivalries, but let's talk about Auburn, Alabama. I mean, that one is
It was a given, right, that we were going to get that, but that
yeah,
series is delivered every year so far.
true. I mean, last year SEC championship could have been hanging in the balance for that one, depending on a couple of things. And it's been one of those great games that we look forward to every year. Brings in one of the highest TV ratings of SEC basketball all year long. So you know they're making their network money, but it's Auburn, Alabama. You can't get much better than that.
The worldwide world of sports is making a worldwide leader in sports is making plenty of money off of the Iron Bowl basketball right now. But you're right. Last year, these teams, took the road game a piece in this one, the winner being there. And we saw some drama with the Mark Sears late shot, very physical basketball game. This game delivered like almost like an old school Big East basketball game at times last season. And I mean, this has become one of the games I think you look forward to throughout the basketball calendar right now with the height and growth and everything else of Alabama basketball and Auburn basketball over the last decade. This seems like a compelling, absolutely fun series ahead again this season. Even though it's going to be really a turning of the page for both these programs, and there's going to be some error changes and very different looks that we haven't seen over the last 2, 3 years. But it'll be a lot of fun regardless. Both these teams did really, really well. Nate Oates versus Bruce Pearl, you can't go wrong there. Another one that I was big on when I was looking at these home and home schedules. I know I'm an Arkansas fan, but I do think that Bruce Pearl versus John Calipari is going to be a very entertaining home and home series. This should be a lot of fun. You think about some of these great basketball games these teams have had over the last couple of years. Like you think about even last year, Arkansas going on their rise and really giving Auburn all they wanted at there in Neville Arena, and then a couple of years ago, Arkansas First time ever they had hosted the number one team in the country back in 2022. Great basketball game there. And then Auburn had, what was it? Cooper and a bunch of other players, Walker, just really good teams all around. And so these games have been a lot of fun. The series has kind of been owned by Auburn as of late. But like this should be a really good series to get them both a home game. And I feel like lately it's kind of been a lot of, like I feel like we've played a lot in Auburn more, but I'm kind of blacking out. I'm kind of blacked out the bad Eric Musselman year at this point. Auburn definitely came in and put a hurt on Arkansas and Bud that does not happen very often. But I do think this will be a really good series and one of the most fun series that we have in SEC basketball next season in the home and homes. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe I can redeem myself by taking my niece to the game this year because it was the bad Eric Musselman year. I took her to her first Razorback basketball game, and I think
Oof.
we left in the third quarter. It was
The
terrible.
third quarter of the game, not the actual. There's not quarters in basketball, but yeah, a third of the way, or three
Yeah.
quarters of the way into it.
Yeah, I think it was before the first TV timeout of the second half. It was
So
oh
you guys left to the under 16. It was that bad
right.
for you. It wasn't a pretty game. It's one that I'm glad I didn't have to watch a ton of since I was traveling that weekend. Pain, suffering, and everything else in that one. So like let's turn the page here and some of these just like one-time offs that we have here. I think it was easy for me as a Razorback fan to pick a couple, but like the one that I think like other fan bases agree with is why are we only getting Arkansas, Kentucky one time this season? Like it doesn't make it 2 years in a row now. Like yeah, this time it's going to Fayetteville, but like I don't know. Like, I think with the hype and everything else, and both these teams having the promise of being very good next season, you should have two games between Kentucky and Arkansas next year with the Pope Calipari drama and everything else that's transpired. This was your opportunity to really capitalize on that. Maddie, your thoughts about Kentucky only making one trip to Bud Walton instead of Arkansas making the return trip to Rupp this season?
Yeah, I mean, last season this game was absolutely phenomenal. It'd be different if, we were kind of having rebuilding years for either one of these teams, but we've got a lot of returning pieces, excellent programs, and I mean, I'm pretty sure it did numbers last year, so why not learn from your mistakes and set them up twice? Like, I don't know if they're just trying to increase ticket sales or travel for only doing one game. Like, are they trying to bring more Kentucky fans to Arkansas? I don't know, but maybe if we make enough fuss about it this year, we'll get it next year. I really don't know what the logic is there, but it doesn't make much sense to me.
I guess ESPN's allergic to money because like this was the number two watch game on that day last season. The only game that beat out Arkansas, Kentucky when these two played on the ESPN ratings was Duke, North Carolina. And like that's a hard one to compete with, like to begin with, but there was so much building up for this game. If Arkansas had played better going into that game there in Rupp Arena, I'm sure like the numbers would have flat out competed with Duke, North Carolina last season. That would have been, this game did numbers last year. We got drama in this game last year. It should be very good. The Kentucky Arkansas series has been good for the last like 5, 6 years now. Even going into the Mike Anderson years, you saw some stellar matchups. These are the two most followed fan bases in SEC basketball. Like, does the conference not want money? Does ESPN not want money? Like, I think that this is one of the most bizarre things. And can you imagine? I know that Kentucky has like a decent home and home series, but could you imagine this season if their home and home series were Florida, Kentucky, Tennessee, Kentucky, and then Arkansas, Kentucky? Look, I know that sounds tough and that sounds crazy, but when it comes to the net rating, your net ranking and everything else, like tough schedules, feed that ranking and boost you up. You could make the NCAA tournament just going 4 for 6 in those games. No problem, not have to worry about anything else, as long as you beat the teams you're supposed to beat. That would have been an incredible series. You take all three at home and then one on the road. Kentucky would have had like an amazing net ranking just on those three games. There was no reason not to do this. And even Arkansas, probably would trade LSU right now. We'll get to that in a second. Right now for something a little bit more net boosting, but we'll talk about more about the Razorback schedule in a little bit. But regardless, in one way or the other, there was nothing but positives in putting these two together for two games this year. Instead, like, I love the Florida Kentucky series. It should be that. We should have, Tennessee, Kentucky together. I'm just saying, like, Arkansas, Kentucky should have been a home and home this season. And I think that would have been a really good one. Also, when you talk about the coaching tree and teams that should be facing each other, more than once this season, we saw two very great basketball. First one wasn't that good, but a great basketball game in the Final Four between Auburn and Florida. Why are we only getting that one once? And you talk about all the storylines and the connections between Todd Golden and Bruce Pearl, like that's another good one. Why only once? Why only one game for those guys? They're at the top of SEC basketball right now.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only thing I could think of is, because Auburn's got a lot of turnover, they've got a lot of new that they're dealing with. So maybe people are thinking, it's not going to be as good as it was last year.
But they still had a really good
Again,
transfer class too.
yeah. Again, I really don't know. This is another one of those, like, we were able to see it several times last year. We were able to see it in March Madness. Why would you not continue that on into the regular season?
I totally agree. Again, is ESPN allergic to money? Is the SEC allergic to money here? Because like that would be a very compelling basketball game, and I'm telling you, it'd be a much more compelling basketball game than Florida, South Carolina. Like I'm just saying, like that would be a much, much more watch basketball game. And speaking of just those odd matchups, which Florida, South Carolina is not that odd, but like odd matchups. Why is Texas and Arkansas only playing once this season? Like it's not really so much Arkansas schedule's weird. Their home and homes are a little funky. Yeah, they got the Auburn one, and I think that's really cool. But like, maybe trade LSU this season because like LSU, seriously think is going to be at the bottom of the SEC. Why wouldn't you want Sean Miller, John Calipari together here? That'd be a very interesting matchup, and two teams that have a history going back 100 years with each other playing basketball. Like, why is that not only getting once? Instead, we're getting Texas, Georgia. Like, raise your hand if you're excited about Texas, Georgia. And now keep your hand up if you were talking about football. Like for real, like that's I'm not getting excited about Texas, Georgia in basketball. I would get excited about Texas, Arkansas in basketball. Right now, as an Arkansas fan, I would certainly be more excited about playing Texas twice than LSU twice. And just given the state of everything right now, Missouri is going to be a good one, I think. Like, I trade one of those two, but out of those two, between LSU and Missouri, I'd want to keep Missouri this year. They seem like much better competition than LSU. But, like, right now, Arkansas, Texas, I don't get why you don't make this a home and home for this season.
Yeah, same here. I mean, looking over everything, if you're trying to pinpoint rivalries and get those at a home and home, I would take Texas over Mizzou any day of the week. Like, if we had to choose, a quote unquote rivalry, since
Yeah.
one of them is kind of being pushed on Arkansas fans.
Yeah, the only reason I want to carry piggyback your point, and I'll let you finish. The only reason I'm even saying that it's not even like Missouri Arkansas rivalry. It's because Missouri's been the better basketball team, and that's what's going to help your net ranking, and you have a more challenging opponent. And I think that stuff, when it comes down to how you're going to see it in March Madness, I want those games. So sorry, carry on your point there. That's why I'm on board with keeping Missouri over LSU for that exchange in the Texas game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if there were one to trade out, it would be LSU. But if SEC is trying to set up home and home rivalries, I feel like Texas is a better series than Mizzou if you're considering it a rivalry. Because like obviously we already talked about Auburn and Alabama. You're getting Kentucky, Florida. Why not do Arkansas, Texas?
It just makes sense. I don't know. As someone who lives in Fayetteville, I'm just saying that the SEC has said to me for a long time, it's like you're going to take your Missouri and you're going to eat it. Like that's you're gonna take that Missouri rivalry and you're going to like it. Again, I would keep though Missouri this season. I would trade out LSU just given the state of the programs in right now, but. I don't get that call. You knew you were going to get those two teams coming in. Um, More than likely. I would like to see them change up some of the way they're doing this just a little bit to get some of these outer rivalries a little bit more, mix it up. I wouldn't mind the conference going to 4 home and homes instead of 3 home and homes just to keep some of these traditions and connections a little bit more together. Because like
Yeah.
I said, like when we talked about like, but why twice? Some of these home and home series that seem a little disappointing. like we just mentioned it right now, Georgia, Texas just does not feel like one that moves the needle for me at all. I think you're in the same mind on that one.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we got a new coach in Sean Miller. Georgia's program's been growing over the past couple years, so I think it's something that could be interesting, but it's not top of the list for me.
No, I just it's not top of the list. There's not any kind of connection there other than football. Football between Georgia and Texas has been pretty cool. But like basketball, it's like you're talking about Sean Miller has got a pretty promising Texas team. I'm not saying that they're going to go out and win the NCAA tournament this year with this Texas squad, but they look better than most first year coaching situations that we've seen in the past. And Mike White's got a Georgia team that we're really unsure about this season. Like that's just a strange home and home series, and I almost expect Texas to sweep Georgia right now at this point. Like we're talking again. This is June 22nd. Like we'll have a long time to go before I actually say that again. But like my impression looking at it, I would expect Texas to sweep Georgia this year right now, and that gives me no excitement when I just look at the paper. Like when I'm buying season tickets, like nothing about that hypes me up. Like nothing about that really just gets me going. And I've talked, my brothers haven't even mentioned it. Like I told you, both my brothers are Texas fans, and I haven't heard either one of them for a second mention on their basketball schedule release going, yeah, Georgia, Texas, man. That's the game. Two others that I want to mention on here. This one I didn't think twice about it. Like Mississippi State, Missouri, like it's almost like Utah Jazz. What's the connection? Like if you get that reference, by the way, you are as old as me. But like Mississippi State and Missouri, like it's tough finding a good home and home opponent for Missouri because they kind of are culturally outside the SEC just a little bit. But I really like the Vanderbilt one last year. I like the Missouri Kentucky when they do that together. Tennessee Missouri's fun. I think in Oklahoma, which they have Oklahoma, but like any kind of mixture with former Big 12 teams, I kind of like for Missouri. The Mississippi State's just kind of okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like nothing about it really moves the needle for me. Maybe both these basketball teams will be really solid next year, and that'll be the compelling point of that. But I don't think it's a needle mover. You?
No, I mean, I would almost rather see Texas A&M and Mizzou.
Yeah, agreed. I think that would be a good home and home is Texas A&M and M and Missouri. I think that'd be really solid.
Yeah, because I mean, you swap that out, and I feel like you've got, at least a little bit of connection there when it comes to, you know, travel. It's not as far from some of the other SEC schools, so you're able to build a little bit of a rivalry there. And it's pretty much the next jump from Oklahoma. So
Well, you said that Texas as a state's probably geographically close to Missouri. College Station's probably you're talking about probably the northernmost team in the SEC versus the southernmost team in the
all right,
SEC.
we're looking at the was that the isosceles triangle there.
It's like map perception is that Reno, Nevada is actually further west than San Diego, California.
Right.
Yeah, but I get your point. I get your point. They're teams that at least have association and geographical ties to each other and everything else. I'm going to mention one more before we even come here. I have no need in my life, no need this season to watch two games of LSU and South Carolina. I am a sick person when it comes to college basketball. I will watch Chicago State. But like for crying out loud, I really don't need to see two games of South Carolina and LSU. Maddie.
You know what I'm really questioning as we go through these schedules, go through the home and homes, and then go through, the ones that we only got once that we need more of, is the SEC just trying to make sure the bottom of the barrel stays at the bottom of the barrel and everybody else just gets more points and better seating in the end.
I don't know about that, but like eventually LSU and South Carolina should be able to dig their way out of their situations. The NIL situation for those two schools has been very rough. And we've seen Lamont Paris bust out before. It's not out of the question that South Carolina could be significantly better this season. I don't have the same kind of hope for LSU, but they could. Right now, like my impression here in the early season, I think these teams are going to be 12 through 16 somewhere in the SEC this year. I really don't have a need to see them twice on the SEC network this season. Like I would rather see something else. And give these teams a chance to cause chaos or something like that. I don't know. I will say, like, scheduling this is tough. We may sound super critical, but like, even in my opinion, like some of the stuff, needs changed up and everything like that. I do think there's an importance for trying to change up the rotation of opponents and everything else. I think some adjustment in the way that we schedule would be more important than the games that we have ahead. Regardless, I think we have some good basketball games in front of us in SEC play.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's an exciting season just because there's going to be a whole lot of mix up and nobody really knows where it's going to land. So I think this year is going to be a good year to, dive in, kind of see where these teams lie once first couple of games get going.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk a little bit more on the schedule. Let's start with ACC SEC Challenge when we come to this non-conference stuff here right now. We've got the matchup for those. Those came out about 11 days ago upon time of recording while we were taking our break. So let's hit some of that, and we'll start with Tuesday night. And I don't think anybody is going to miss the headliner here. Florida Duke is certainly the game that everybody's looking for there. But also on Tuesday night, you got Georgia, Florida State, Ole Miss, Miami, Kentucky, North Carolina, Missouri, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and Pitt, Tennessee, Syracuse, South Carolina, Virginia Tech, and Oklahoma takes on Wake Forest. Maddie, obviously we know the headliner on Tuesday night's probably going to be Florida Duke. The one after that is the matchup between the Blue Bloods, between Kentucky and North Carolina. Those would probably be the two games that everybody's watching the most. What's your number three? Give me your number three game on that list that you think is going to be the best one to watch.
Number 3. I think Ole Miss, Miami could be very interesting.
Okay.
Um,
Miami's got a new coach this year. It's a new look Miami team.
Yep. I think we're going to see a little bit of difference there in the style of play. And then Ole Miss has just kind of been right there on the edge. We just feel like they should have been a little bit better than they were. So I think that's going to be a good game to take a look at and kind of see where they lie at this point in the season.
That sounds fun. I'm with you. That's a lot of transfers, a lot of new faces for that game. So that's one of the unknown mystery there makes it very interesting. I agree with you. I'll go two games here, but the one I'll pick is Oklahoma Wake Forest. I think that one right now, if you told me to pick one, I think both these teams are going to be around that edge where they're looking at 8, 9 seeds and maybe even the bubble. Both these teams, that's where I kind of have them perceived right now with these two. That could be a very interesting game to have ramifications for the NCAA tournament in March. And we're talking early December basketball here. I think that one's really fun. And then that would be my pick. The one I would also say could be very interesting. Bucky McMillan put together a pretty good roster at Texas A&M. Pitt's been a notoriously good basketball team that's been on the edge for the ACC of getting in or out of the ACC or NCAA tournament for the last couple of years. That could be another really big game with implications for the NCAA tournament. So I like Texas A&M Pitt as a game to kind of get a barometer really for how year one's going to go for the Bucky McMillan game. Really, the last couple of years, the ACC SEC Challenge has had a moment where a team surprised somebody. And then that was the moment it's like, let's turn our ears up here. We got to pay attention to South Carolina. We got to pay attention to Missouri. When they played Cal, even though it was an ugly basketball game when they played them last year, like everybody kind of paid attention and honed in on certain teams afterwards coming out of the ACC SEC Challenge. So maybe this is the Bucky McMillan Pitt story, this year. Maybe we'll know if how much attention we should pay to Texas A&M in Bucky's first year. By the way,
Like that was my next up if I didn't pick Ole Miss.
yeah, I think those are both really good ones. So the consensus number 3, I guess, is Texas A&M and Pitt would be the one.
Let's go for it.
Since it was both our number 2s on there. By the way, I just feel like Missouri gets the worst picks ever when it comes to the ACC SEC Challenge. They got Pitt year 1 on the road, which was a good game. But a rough season for Missouri ultimately, and I feel like a lot of fans have probably mentally dumped that season. And then last year they got Cal. Notre Dame, I don't have a lot of faith in as being a good basketball team. So I don't know. I'm not in love with this. I'm sorry, Missouri. Like I don't know how you keep getting the not great picks in the ACC SEC Challenge. Hopefully year 4 will come up with something a little bit better. All right, so Wednesday night, we've got LSU, Boston College, Alabama, Clemson, Mississippi State, Georgia Tech, Arkansas, Louisville, Auburn, North Carolina State, Vandy, SMU, Texas, Virginia. Okay, I'm going to put a pause on this real fast. We both like Arkansas LSU. All right, Arkansas Louisville. Like that seems to be a good game. Um, let's pick something else to talk about here. Like anything you want to, anywhere you want to go on this Wednesday night, Matt.
I mean, obviously, I feel like looking at everything, you've got to pay attention to Alabama Clemson. I think that's going to be kind of the big one on the board outside of Arkansas Louisville. And, Arkansas Louisville, I feel like it's just the coaching history there makes that game as interesting as it is. But Alabama Clemson, I mean, Clemson's kind of in that rebuilding year as well. Alabama's, they're going to have to find an identity with Mark Sears gone. So I think you've got two powerhouses from previous seasons matching up. Great coaches, but we got to see the chemistry. So if the chemistry's there in your first few games with Alabama and you're seeing Clemson get where they need to be, I think this could be a very interesting matchup.
Alabama Clemson has happened twice now in 3 years of the ACC SEC Challenge. Like I'm kind of
Well,
like
they're trying to build something.
they got something weird going on. Like it's almost like Texas Georgia football at this point, but at least this has actually been a very interesting series of basketball here. They were in the ACC SEC Challenge in its inaugural year. They faced each other in the Elite Eight, and then now this year they're going to face each other again. Like Clemson Alabama is just becoming a regular occurrence at this point. Going down. Another game I'll point to because again we're both excited about Arkansas Louisville and I think that's going to be a good game between two teams who are on similar tiers of the college basketball world and obviously Cal playing Louisville is really interesting and Kenny Payne being on the coaching staff at Arkansas taking on Pat Kelsey and what's a rising Louisville program after some tough years. I'll go to the game that I like out of this mix. Auburn, North Carolina State. Like that to me is a very interesting one. This is a new era for Auburn basketball. Everything's different. Gone are the days of Janai Broom and everything else. So you had to go really hard in the transfer portal this year. So it's going to be a fresh look Auburn team taking on a North Carolina State team that's now headed by Will Wade. Like that's really interesting. And you got all these players that Will Wade has pulled through the transfer portal. Like that is the opportunity to be a really interesting clash between two good coaches and two really tough what might be two really good transfer class teams facing each other. So that's one that I'm like, circle that one. That's a good one for Wednesday night. And then Vanderbilt SMU, clash of the old Magnolia schools from back in the day. That one's kind of, if you know the history, it's somewhat entertaining. Don't think
I
it's
do
let's
wish we would have gotten Auburn, North Carolina State when North Carolina State was still feeling the burn and Jedi Broom was heading up Auburn. That would have been a great
That
matchup.
would have been a great matchup of big men down low in that one. Let's jump to the MTEs. How about that? Because that's another thing that we've got on the schedule here to take a look at. Let's break this down real fast because the MTEs are shaping out pretty well. We have Charleston Classic with Georgia, the Greenbrier Invitational with South Carolina. The Hall of Flame Classic is back in Kansas City. Mississippi State's going to be heading up there. Texas heads to Maui this year for the SEC. Tons of teams throwing their name into the bracket for the Players Era Festival with Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee all going out there. And then the Acicure, I believe is how you pronounce that company's name. Ole Miss is going to be headed out to that one. Battle for Atlantis, Vanderbilt's headed there. And then Rady's Children, Florida will be in. Emerald Coast Classic will be LSU. And then for the predetermined games, the CBS Thanksgiving Classic, Arkansas will be taking on Duke and Chicago, and then the Wildcat MTE. There's not an official name out here, but that's just what they called it in the past, along with about 50 other names. But Kentucky's got Valpo and Eastern Illinois in that setup, which is no one's even going to realize it's an MTE. Like no, it's going to feel so a mid-major basketball game for Kentucky fans. It's going to be crazy. Maddie, anything stand out to you in that one? Looking over the fields.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things, just taking a look kind of at some of these brackets, I like that Georgia's got Clemson in their bracket as well as, Big East team. But I like, the matchup because we just talked about Alabama, Clemson. You're going to see Georgia, Clemson. So I think that's a good, kind of SEC, ACC possibility there that could tell us kind of where the SEC is compared to the ACC at that point in the year. And then, I mean, obviously, you got to pay attention to the Players Airs Fest. There was a ton of controversy around it last year. This year we've got 3 SEC teams. So I think it's going to be another one that a lot of people are going to have strong opinions on, but you're going to get good basketball out of it.
Yeah, you're gonna get good basketball out of it, and some point down the line, we'll be reading an article on Sportico about the Players Ever Festival and how about either its success or its complete, car crash. We'll see how that goes down. So another couple others to take a note here. I really am interested in the possibility of Florida taking on Wisconsin and Rady's Children Invitational. We'll see if that plays out. That should be somewhat entertaining. And then I'm like you, I do like Georgia, but Maui this year looks not quite the same as it has been the last couple of seasons. It looks like a good year. Arizona State's going to be out there. Boise State's going to be out there. Chaminade's return. Will Wade, North Carolina State. Seton Hall. USC with Eric Musselman. And then Washington State's all going to be in this Maui Invitational. It's a good, not great Maui. I think it's a really good opportunity, though, for Sean Miller to win some big-time basketball games out there in Hawaii. So I think that one certainly can be a very, very good matchup. But Maddie, here's the thing that with all these announcements and everything else coming to light, we're starting to see some of these schedules, occur to us and what it's going to look like for next season for some of these teams having a lot of games in place. Some teams we were now aware of 20, 19, 21 games were on their schedule. So over two-thirds of their schedule known. Have you seen the Arkansas Razorbacks schedule this season?
I mean, in my nightmares after seeing it, yes, nightly.
This is going to be absolutely insane. Folks, if you have not seen this, here it is. Yeah, this thing is crazy. This is the most, I gotta say, this is the best schedule I think Arkansas has ever put together in Arkansas basketball history. They are facing every team that made the Elite Eight last year. They are facing Kentucky and Ole Miss, who made the Sweet 16 last year out of the SEC. And then they're facing a number of teams who made the NCAA tournament this season. This is a crazy, crazy year. Out of that non-conference schedule, you got Houston and New York. You've got Duke and Chicago. You got Texas Tech and Dallas. You're going to go to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. And then you have two really good home games. And then at some point, we'll get the date on what should be the return trip for Baylor coming to Bud Walton Arena after the deal that was made for last season. And then not to mention all these SEC teams that made the NCAA tournament last year, including Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Missouri, Texas, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, Auburn, Alabama, and of course the national champions, Florida. Maddie, please share your thoughts on what is 21 out of 31 games being up against NCAA tournament teams, and we don't know who the mid-majors are going to be. There may be more NCAA tournament teams when they go out and schedule, I don't know, McNeese at this point.
I mean, obviously as a basketball fan, this is what you want. You want March Madness style basketball all year long. But as a Razorback fan, this is absolutely terrifying because we kind of know what this team is going to look like. But thanks to Eric Musselman, I now have a forever fear that any good team is just going to be absolutely terrible. I'm going to knock on every piece of wood around me right now, since it actually came out of my mouth. But
Oh, I have trauma too. I get you, but continue.
but I mean, like I said, as a basketball fan, this is absolutely phenomenal, and I cannot wait for it. But as a Razorback fan, I am terrified.
I get that thought. I get that thought a lot. But like, look at it this way. Alabama and NATO have scheduled kind of like this, for the last couple of seasons where they have put together some awesome games, right? You think about like when they did it the first time a couple of years ago, they faced Purdue, Arizona, and Creighton, and then had Clemson in the ACC SEC Challenge. Four really solid games, and then an Ohio State team that was pretty high up in the net as well was part of their MTE run, and Oregon against Dana White or Dana Altman as well. Like that was a great schedule. They did it again last year and put together another really good schedule. This year, this is Arkansas doing the exact same thing. The point is, I'm trying to make that Alabama team went what 6-4 after they got out of that 10-game stretch from hell. And where did they end up in the net? They ended up like fifth when the net came out at that point. And then where did they end up in the NCAA tournament? The Final Four. Like you can have really tough schedules and put together really good games and expect that your team is going to be challenged week in, week out, get some really good experience as a basketball team throughout the year to raise the level of competition and be good and knowing what it takes to win against teams like that in the NCAA tournament. Like, I think there's benefit in that. And then, not to mention, even if you lose some of these games, which I'm telling you, Arkansas is not getting through that unscathed. Like there will be bumps and elbows and owies somewhere along the way as this goes. But even if they have a rough stretch, like we talked about it, like Alabama back when they did that, I think they either went 1 or 3 or 0 and 4 during that series of really tough games that they had scheduled in the non-conference. That team still ended up solid in the net. Arkansas, even if they take a bunch of those outaways that we were just talking about, can still end up somewhere in the top 15 in the net, depending on their efficiency numbers and everything else that comes into play throughout the year. So I like this way of scheduling. I really do. Like, to me, like the way that you should build your schedule is one of two ways. The way like you do this, where you face the gauntlet and a lot of really, really tough competition throughout the year. And there's almost, unless you pending disaster, you should be in a really solid spot for the NCAA tournament. On the other hand, the other way I like to schedule is against really good mid majors over and over and over again, where you're challenged with that. And then you just see your net just naturally increase throughout the year once all these teams bust through the NCAA tournament and the committee goes, they beat how many tournament teams? Like that's the other way of doing it that I really like. So to me, this is a solid schedule. This is one of my favorite ways of doing it. Alabama's been doing it for a couple of years now. This is fun. I am going to be glued to my TV, and I'm telling you, I'm picking two to go to. I've already figured out that my weekend is clear when they have the Texas Tech game, so I'm going to do that one. When we find out the date, we haven't quite got the date yet, I don't think, for that Michigan State game. When I find that one out, that one's going to be on my trip to make up there to that Michigan State up in East Lansing. I think that's going to be a super fun basketball game. And then, trust me, I'm good at that point. Like, watching Tom Izzo take on John Calipari, and then a fun trip down to Dallas. Those just, I'm good. I don't need to go to New York and Chicago. That's fine. Like, I've got those games right there. That's perfect. Two Hall of Fame coaches and a revenge game in Dallas. Maddie,
I was going to say, you enjoy the cold up there in East Lansing because that is not a trip that I will make.
you're killing me. Someone's got to go with me to go see Tom Izzo and John Calipari play each other. I'll drive my truck. It's good, like we can get through the snow in that thing. It'll
I don't
work.
know. I mean, so many good games to look forward to. Obviously, like you said, we've got the Elite Eight. Like that's just it. The
The
Elite
Elite
Eight
Eight.
is Arkansas.
Elite.
I mean, you know me, I'm a big Houston fan. I think that one's on my radar, so may make the trip to go see that one. But um it like you said, it's a good schedule. Just the anxiety inside of me as an Arkansas fan, it lingers.
Me and you will figure out PTO to make these trips, and we'll take our significant others and force them to learn everything about these games on the way up. Avery told me, it's like, I don't think I would have. I was like so excited when they announced the Michigan State Arkansas game. It's like, I don't think I know the significance of this at all. And it's like, don't worry, it's a 12-hour trip up there. I'll get you caught up.
Right.
So like we'll figure out which games we're going to, but I'm telling you that Michigan State, Arkansas is the one I want to get. We'll figure it out. We'll come up with a plan on this. Another team that's gotten a really solid schedule we're starting to get a picture of is Kentucky. They've also got a really solid setup going on right now. We know they have Michigan State in the coming up, and they're going to have Gonzaga, St. John's, which is the one that I'm looking most forward to in the CBS Sports Classic. We've got the info right now on that home MTE that Kentucky's going to host with Valpo and Eastern Illinois. Not to mention their ACC SEC challenge game with North Carolina. They got a game against Indiana, and then, of course, they'll have Louisville on the road this season, and they do have the announced game of Southern Kentucky schedule starting to come together. It looks very promising, and another really good one. Any of those games, besides obviously the one we both have talked about already earlier in the spring, St. John's and Kentucky. Any others that you're looking forward to?
I mean, obviously, you got to take a look at North Carolina, two big blue bloods there. But I think Gonzaga is going to be interesting. They were a little underwhelming last season, so I think they're on, kind of the road to recovery, if you will, against a really good Kentucky team. So I think that one will be very interesting, especially um, since it's a neutral site. That is, again, the not really neutral site game for Gonzaga.
I think, yeah, I don't know where it's being hosted yet. I know Kentucky fans know, but I'll have to look that one up later. When I was just breaking it down to like off the top of my head, I don't know. It should be somewhere closer to Kentucky this year. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I think it flips up and they go into different scenario. It's weird the way they've had this Mark Few, and I think Calipari set this up with Mark Few a while back, if I remember the history of this right. And they set up a bunch of weird sites to help both Gonzaga and Kentucky's net rankings. Was the plan here. It's interesting. I'm with you though. That should be one that a game I'm locked in on because last year that was drama. That was the most dramatic game of the year, and the first time we had probably seen a 1-3-1 zone in 20 years of college basketball. I'm being hyperbole. That's hyperbole. But like, yeah, that was one of the best games of the non-conference last year. Let's see if we get that again between Gonzaga and Kentucky. Both were tournament teams last year and very good teams. Let's see what Mark Few's got going on in Gonzaga for this upcoming season. I think that one's going to be great. I'm actually looking forward more to that one than North Carolina. I've heard a lot of Kentucky fans that are talking about Indiana, Kentucky. A lot of talk between those two. They like the chirp between the two of them being neighbors and big time basketball programs. And I know we've mentioned Indiana being a blue blood program historically on this program because of Bob Knight and all the history of Indiana basketball. They make fun of that all the time because of how tough it's been for Indiana over the last several years since Bob Knight left that program. But that's one to definitely keep your eye on as well. Other notables to pick up here, the games that we're aware of. Alabama's taking on Arizona. Auburn's also taking on Arizona. Those should be pretty good basketball games against Tommy Lloyd. And I believe the Alabama one should be for the CM Newton Classic. I haven't seen that confirmed yet, but they're saying it's in Birmingham. So we'll see if that is indeed the CM Newton Classic or if they're just going to have a random neutral site game in Birmingham this year. And then additionally, we've learned that Florida is going to be taking on UConn. There's also Florida-George Washington game that's been scheduled. And then I believe Florida's actually taking on Arizona at some point as well, too. So we'll see a lot of Tommy Lloyd this season. As basketball goes on. But those are some of the more notable ones that we've seen come in. There's going to be more stuff talked about. We know that Missouri's taking on Minnesota. There's, game here, that's power conference. We'll see if we get some more compelling ones as we come into the season. We didn't find out for some of these teams. It'll be a minute, like it'll take a little bit. Arkansas last year didn't come out until like August, and then we were all like, we got Baylor, y'all. And it was like, it looked super cool. So we'll see what happens with that going forward. But
Do you think
okay.
for Florida, UConn, we need like a reality show style confession cam just on Dan Hurley at all times? See how many times he cries.
Oh my gosh, that would be great. Yeah, this Dan Hurley cam all the way. Just need it. Just need the Dan Hurley cam to watch him
Like
just
a
throwing
temper
fits.
tantrum count, like
What level of temper tantrum will Danny Hurley throw? and then what the post game seat now? I shouldn't behave that way. Um, it's not how I should conduct myself as the head of this university. I apologize to the player. Apologize to
I
Tom.
don't think he will. He's not good.
No, it'll be like eventually it'll come out, and it's like that doesn't represent myself. Dan, you're you walked out of the tunnel saying you got screwed last time out of the Florida game. You were playing the national champions. You were just like, I hope you guys don't get screwed too. You guys asked the other team in the tunnel there. Like, come on. Yeah, Dan Hurley camp, solid addition to college basketball. Watch. Everyone should at this point. All right, guys. Hey, this is an episode that we're recording on Sunday. We've got more stuff that's on the way, by the way. We start summer camp this week, so be on the lookout. Kentucky fans, we got stuff coming out on JQ as he makes our portal list. And then also we'll start our freshman 15 list this week with Nate Ament for you Tennessee fans out there and Darius Acup Jr. for you Razorback fans. Should be a lot of fun. That stuff that's coming out this week as part of summer camp. But we'll get another episode. There's not going to be a set schedule right now on the Hoops Southbound Show portion of things. But when we get something significant to talk about and a lot of things to talk about kind of all coming together, we'll talk to you guys about it. So until next time, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.